Welcome back to the podcast today with me, Johnny Pardo. And I welcome my guest Alpha today, where we're going to be covering some very exciting things today. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation. So just a quick introduction to Alpha, and then I'll let him share a little bit more about himself. So Alpha is the modern mystic leaders turn to when emotional exhaustion, heartbreak, or spiritual disconnect has left them questioning everything. Once illegally sentenced and forced to find clarity in silence, Alpha emerged with an embodied wisdom blending neuroscience, scripture, and deep transformation. Today, he guides high-achieving yet soul-weary men into divine self-mastery. So, like I said, welcome to the show today, Alpha. Glad to have you on board. So, first of all, really interesting just to hear a little bit more about this journey that you went into this silence, and then this wisdom sort of emerged out of you. Just be interested to hear a little bit about that part of your journey.
Thank you very much, Johnny. It's just a pleasure to be in your company here. I am really honored, and I'm amazed for the work you've been doing here. But before I answer that question, I just want to kind of talk to the audience for a brief moment here. Johnny has been doing an amazing work, and I think I've done it. I'm not going to ask you something I haven't done it. Take a moment of your time today. Just go there and give Johnny a 5-star review and stellar feedback for him because he deserves it. But not only that Johnny deserve it, you definitely need it, because one of the things, as we're going to be talking about it, usually I walk my clients, is this concept of Thanksgiving. Often we take things for granted and we don't appreciate them. Not that we don't value them, it's just that we don't take a time to appreciate it. And therefore, they don't have the impact that is needed in our mind in order to bring that transformation. So that's why I'm asking the audience to be intentional in taking that step today, and whatever they're listening to, just can't go and show that appreciation to Johnny, to say thank you for an amazing work he's doing. Leave them stellar review, but you can do even more. Take that link, share with your friends, with your any favorite episode. I hope this is going to be one of your favorite episodes that you can share, so that more people can come and listen to Johnny. And going back to that, and thank you everybody for taking that initiative. I have done it myself, so please, I appreciate for taking that moment. But it's your journey of being grateful for everything else and open a new journey, a new chapter, so you can start appreciating everything that comes along the way. And guess what? The mind tend to reward us for the things that we are attention at. And by doing so, suddenly you're going to start seeing things that you tend to appreciate more and more. You're going to appreciate people, and guess what? Life will give back appreciation. So if you're in a place where you feel a little bit off, this is the place to start. Go there and take care of Johnny. So through the question that Johnny have presented, my name again is Alpha Mshihiri, and just to kind of easy in the spell, there is Alpha. Normally people spell it Alfa. There's a story why it changed to Alfa to Alpha. It's a different day. But if you look at me, it's Alpha, and my last name is Mshihiri. A lot of I's there, but hopefully you can catch it. And my journey, like many journey, started at a place where things usually are at the worst moment, because that's where we find our discovery. And usually I tell my clients, guess what? Your worst moment is your comeback moment, always. When you think of a pendulum, it goes one side and the other. The longer or the deeper the pendulum swings, it tends to swing back at a great magnitude. But the key is to be aware. And usually that's the issue that we have. So for me, I help more stamina. Of course, you talked about men, but I do help with men and women both, who I consider them individuals of faith to some level. They're not deeply active or anything else, but they believe on something. They are spiritually burnt out, meaning that they have done the things that the world, everything else, and everybody else is telling them to do, but yet they're not seeing the results in the direction they want to see. And that being whether more specifically, I kind of focus on their relationship. It can be relationship with themselves, relationship with their spouse, and relationship with money. So those are the kind of the element I really focus on in helping people to untangle themselves from that situation, find the freedom they need because again, it is the place I was at some point in place in my life. I use tools. I mean, I have a framework that I use. It's called a 3I framework, which kind of incorporate individualize. I mean, you idealize, and then you introduce that which you've idealized, and then you iterate as kind of that three-step process in order to embody the concept, the idea you want to be. And the theme behind it is this thing I call self-love. And I know you have, Johnny, had a couple of few guests who have come and talk about self-love, but it's kind of really the center core of everything I do. And it's just the framework that I use to be able to kind of wrap that up. And I look at self-love in a slightly different angle that many people have. And we'll talk a little bit about it. But it wasn't always the same in my life, as Johnny pointed out earlier. My journey began actually where this space of transformation began when I found myself in a place that I would not wish for, even if I had a worse enemy of mine. I was actually I would consider at the peak of my career at that time as a business analyst. I was embarking in some amazing project. And actually, I had just kind of finished a project. It was about $25 billion problem that I had to solve for a client, which you knew sitting there as a business, like, man, consultant, I mean, I've done this. So it was kind of quite an accomplishment. And I remember that day, I was just finished a call with another client who needed I mean, the problem they have was quite bigger, but they're willing to dash out about $250,000. I'm like, that's a good contract that I'm going to have. And it was only a 6-month contract. And my receptionist kind of sent me an IM. Those days, there was an IM, instant messengers. Today, we get all kind of tools that are available, but it was 2014. So instant messenger was kind of one of those things in the corporate world. She sent me an IM. She said, you have a guest here. I don't know. They don't look very nice, but I'm going to give you a call. Pick up the phone. I just want to give you a heads up. And she called me and she's like, oh, you got a guest. She didn't say they're strange. She just kind of course, it was an IM where she said it. So excuse me, I went down and look, there were 3 gentlemen standing. So the first one I approached and I said, okay, my name is Alpha. How you doing? He said, fine. And he said, oh, my name is so-and-so. I'm an IRS agent. So I'm like, okay, IRS agent. So my mind quickly ran. I'm like, IRS agent. I'm like, my taxes are very simple. But I'm like, don't worry. The second guy said, oh, my name is so-and-so. I'm a Secret Service agent. I'm like, okay. My mind again goes back like everything else. Secret Service agent usually protect. It's a White House. Kind of that's what I'm thinking. So I'm like, what are they? IRS agent, Secret Service agent. It makes no sense. And the last guy said, my name, blah, blah, blah. I'm an FBI agent. I'm like, oh, shoot. So
Wow.
3 acronyms that you don't want to meet them at any moment in time if you can avoid here in the United States. UK might be a little bit different, but I'm assuming if they're associated with those organizations, you want to like, I don't want to know you. I don't want to be associated with you. I just want to do business with you from the distance if possible. So I'm like, my heart was pounding. But the project I was working was a veteran project. I was kind of doing a referral program for them. So my assumption was maybe it'd have to do with that. Because in that period of time, I had to tour several military bases. And each and every base I went, there was a different clearance. So I'm thinking maybe it have to do with that. Because I couldn't think of anything how these 2 individuals come to visit me. And I said, oh, can I help you? They quickly told me, man, you are, I think they said you're under arrest. I'm like, oh, what did I do to be under arrest? Of course, they were very gentle in every aspect. They didn't grab me or anything else. I said, you know what? I just wrap up a project. My laptop is on. I've logged out, but I cannot leave that laptop just sitting there the way with the information that I was dealing with. We walked together to my office and I logged off everything else and we walked back to the elevator. When we got to the elevator, they're like, we got to handcuff you because of the fact. I mean, we can't just walk with you like that's a protocol. I'm like, okay. And we walk out there and I found myself in a federal court in the United States for the first time. I was like, okay. And at that time, I was a very devout Christian. So, the first instinct, is just keep praying and you're crying. And I'm like, because I was in the cell by myself and went through the motions for a few hours before I appeared before the judge. And the judge kind of read the stuff. My mind was long gone. I couldn't even understand what was said. But later I learned that the charges was I used to have a mortgage company and a real estate investment company back in 2000, from 2000 to 2008. And during the collapse of the economy in 2008, for those who were young enough at that time, might remember. And that business, I had closed it. But there was a lot of what they call here in US creative financing product. Then my mortgage like company, like many others, because this product were issued by banks. So we sold them to our clients. And they said some of those transactions had some element of fraudulent activities. And I, being the broker, either I assisted those individuals, providing them information that made them easier for them to take advantage of those programs. And so, in an essence, they call it aiding and abetting. I said, so I aided somebody, and I'm like, how did I aid somebody? I was just doing just applications. But long story short, my lawyer advised me, no, this case is bogus, let's go to trial. And I'm like, hey, if it's bogus, let's go to trial. Not understanding I'm assuming, of course, my lawyer that would have known, but for me, if I knew what I know today, I would have taken a different route. Went to trial, and the game and the rules of the trials are completely different than what I've seen in the TV and what is usually normal. So I lost that trial, and I was sentenced to 155 months. And just you
Wow.
can sit there, and I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? So I'm like, okay, this is just, it was surreal. But prior to that, because of that indictment, I started kind of looking for things different because I'm like, this concept that I've learned from church about going to church every Sunday, praying and giving tithing and everything and servicing, haven't worked here. I mean, I'm a guy who lived with my principle. I have my principle, my values. And I had all these things. I'm like, all of those things could not have helped me in this moment. There must be something more. I mean, I didn't want to just kind of feel like a victim. People were telling me, it's God's plan. I'm like, man, I'm a father. I cannot see myself teaching my kids by punishing them. So it didn't register at that moment. I started questioning things that were already have become a foundational because I never had an opportunity to question them. But that was my moment. I'm like, I have to start looking for these things differently because it's a false or we're looking at it a different way, in a wrong way. So I have to look for a different angle. And I had learned this concept of questions. The questions we ask have a make a difference in the responses we get. Whether these questions we ask ourselves or we ask somebody else, but there's a lot of questions we ask ourselves. And those questions determine the point of view we see things, and therefore the actions we take and experiences we have as a result of that. So I decided to start reframing my questions different. It's not why it happened to me. I wanted to know, how did I get here? Because I figure if I can know from my knowledge of businesses, I usually do this, what we call a business process. I look at the process today. By understanding the process today, I can improve it to make it better tomorrow. So I started asking myself, how did I get here? And no, because when I looked at the activities and say, oh, you had a mortgage company, I said, there's millions of brokers who have taken this. And in fact, when I was reviewing my evidence, there was a lot of people in my office who admitted to have done wrong on those applications and said I had no knowledge of the fact, even though I was the broker, because I was not dealing with the day-to-day activities. They will go through a different process and everything else. So I said, if these guys some of them have said, I had no clue of it, I never taught them anything, how come none of them went to prison? I'm the one who's in prison. So I'm like, there gotta be more to this whole thing, and I need to uncover. So that's where actually my journey, and I started diving in and reading. I was keen up to that moment. I only had read the Bible, but now I said I gotta read. I gotta read more. I gotta look at more stuff. So I started diving in other book, Kabbalahs. I started looking at Magadivitas, which is kind of the Hindu book. I started looking at the Buddhist. So I was just like, I'm going to consume as much information, and then I'm going to sit down and start processing. And of course, at the same time, I'm looking at my case and then realizing that case that actually they had given me an illegal sentence. So I'm like, okay, I have this parallel path. I'm learning to discover something different because I need to have a different type of information that will kind of fuel me to go forward in a different direction. And then at the other side, I have to deal with this legal matter. Financially, I was already being drained, and I didn't want to. I have a wife, so I didn't want to burden my wife with financial resources. I decided I'm going to learn law. So I spent a lot of time reading law and a lot of time kind of uncover certain other information. And it took years because, you're in prison. You don't have the resources that today you can just go and Google and get, or you can get a coach who can help you. So I became my own coach for all these years to start reading, understanding. I had to learn how to meditate, to visualize, to focus, and just kind of quiet my inner self, finding answers. And of course, through the material. So each information I will read, I will practice it. And like, I got to put this to test. So it's a journey that I would say took about almost 9 years. And along the way, of course, I started seeing the results and I started sharing with people. And actually, for a period of time in prison, I started teaching this to prisoners. And a lot of them started seeing breakthrough in their relationship, in their cases. And guards will come and ask me for advice. And then prison staff will come and ask me for advice. And I will kind of break it down. But all of those it was a discovery process. I'm like, is it just a fluke, or is it actually a process? Is it real, or is just something, one of those, it could have happened anyway? Because you kind of get into that moment, and I'm self-doubting myself. My self-esteem has crashed as a result of this. And I'm wondering, even if these people are in this environment, if I go out, is anybody going to be willing to listen to me? All of these things are just kind of happening in my life, in my mind, while I'm fighting my case to correct this illegal sentence. But something very interesting happened. I mean, actually, there was a gentleman who was accused in US here. If you have a criminal history and you possess a firearm, that's an offense. So this guy had two criminal history and possessed a firearm. So by regardless of whatever the case is, he was facing 180 month in sentence. He didn't use the firearm. It was actually what they call constructive possession. They didn't find it with the firearm, but the firearm was within the vicinity that he was, and therefore there was an assumption that he possessed it, and they were able to find people to collaborate that. So he came to me and said, Alpha, I'm just, regardless, I'm going to get 180 month. I'm going to take this case to trial. I said, how are you going to do that without having any plan? So I shared with him this concept of self. I said, what I've learned and discover, we are always reflecting to the world. The world is the mirror of the thoughts and emotions we hold, which collectively are our belief system. So therefore, somewhere, somehow, you had held a certain belief system, whether you felt as a victim for this system, and that belief system is only replayed back into your life because you never cured it. He said, so how am I going to cure it? So I walk him through the process. Very simple. At that time, this framework that I shared earlier was not in place, but the steps were already there. So I said, you know what? First, what do you want to have out of this? What is the outcome you want to have? And he said, man, who else do you want to have? I want to be home. I said, okay, that's amazing. So you want to be home. So that's the thing. And I said, I'm not asking you whether you believe. I don't know if I'm not asking how you're going to get home. Let's just identify your goal. He said, I want to be home free. I said, okay, let's go there. Let's introduce that. I said, take this concept that you're free and assume that you are. So before you go to sleep tonight, actually the following day he was going to trial. I said, before you go to sleep tonight, replay this picture. You are home, how it looks like. Play it as if you already imagined you're there. Feel it. I said, don't only imagine, but feel it. And hear the conversation of people whom you know around your circle are conforming that. So maybe they are saying, congratulations, they're giving you a hug, you see the smile. I said, okay, then what's next? I said, then just keep repeating it as you go to sleep. If you wake up in the middle of the night, remember that picture. And he said, that's simple. I can do that. I'm like, great. And he went out and did it. The following day, he went to try. He went to the court. I think it was just what they call a jury selection. He came back. He said, Alpha, I did not only just do that when I went tonight to sleep, but I kept practicing it over and over, even during the trial. I said, that's amazing. He said, after all, let me just go and do this thing. He went back. I didn't see him. The next day, he went to trial again. He never came back. So he had a cousin who was there, and the cousin came and said, Mr. Blacks, that's what his name. He said, Mr. Blacks came and told me, I was talking, said, because he's his cousin. He said, he just asked me to come and say thank you because he went to trial. And despite all the evidence, there was a fingerprint. There was all the evidence were against him. But he said something amazing in court. Somebody who was not supposed to be there showed up and asked a key question that the government failed to answer. He went and told, the guy said, I just came for a different purpose here. And suddenly I see this case, and it was a government forensic was testifying about fingerprint. And the guy just happened to be a journalist specializing in fingerprint. So he saw a loophole there, and he approached the lawyer and told the lawyer, why don't you recall that person and ask them these questions? So the lawyer asked him, why should I ask? He said, I don't know, but I think there's something wrong there. And that was the key. When the lawyer started asking, of course, the lawyer was inspired in a way the responses came and nailed the case. And the jury found Mr. Blacks not guilty. You walk away. I mean, every person I've told them when the cousin told me that, people were asking, so what happened? I explained. They said, no, no, no. It makes no sense. I said, that's what happened. In this case, when you start applying a process that is proven time and time, it doesn't matter whether it makes sense or not. Blacks wanted to be home free. And that's what happened. And at that time, when it happened to me, when I heard that message, it dawned on me. I'm like, I've been fighting this system trying to correct a sentence, and they're not willing to do so. Because there's a statement in the scriptures, and I'm just going to use it because that's one of those things, if it's okay.
Yeah.
It says, do not resist evil. And a lot of preachers, you ask, they don't want to touch it because it makes no sense. That's what Jesus said. Do not resist evil. Of course, he went forward and talked about if somebody slaps you on the right cheek, give them the other cheek and all that stuff. But the key there, it's very simple, this statement that evil is the thing that is opposing you, that environment, that experience that you are having, the pain. He said, do not resist it. Because if you resist it, you're thinking about it. And the more you resist it, you're going to emotionalize it. And
Interesting.
if you emotionalize it, it becomes you. So how can you fight you? It becomes harder. But he goes forward and give us that example and said, you have to, if somebody slapped you on the left or the right, give them the other cheek. In an essence, if you're having a pain, do not keep focusing on it. Turn your attention to the opposite side. And to me, that moment was like, that's what Blacks did. He didn't focus on being a victim, or he needed to go home, or he needed to fight this system, or to fight the case. He focused on the fact that he's at home. He was slapped on the right, and he turned on the other cheek. The other cheek is the pleasant side. So for me, that moment, I said, I'm going to stop fighting this case, and I'm just going to continue to use the same process I told Blacks. And I did. For people actually were telling me, Alpha, you're stupid, man. You're very good. You're very good at law. Why don't you keep fighting? I said, I fought enough. I'm going to leave it alone. And I'm going to start focusing inside. As within, so is without. And I did this practice for about 2 months or so. One day I'm just laying down in my meditation state. I get a call. I mean, they call me up on a PA and said, Alpha, come down. And then my roommate or my cellmate knew about it, that I was focusing on internally because we talked about these things. And he came back and he came to me and said, Alpha, I think this is the moment. He was very excited. I'm like, what do you mean? He said, they're calling you. I think this is the moment. I'm like, okay. I went down, said, sign some papers. It was Friday, I remember. They told me Monday was the holiday. I said, Tuesday, we gotta get you out of here before 1. I'm like, okay, this is awesome.
Wow.
Indeed, like that. The prosecutor who was opposing my motions, the court that said no all this time, all of them were part of this process by saying yes. I didn't do nothing. I didn't ask them. I didn't beg them. I didn't write a single motion. Out of their own volition, they found wisdom to change their mind and being able to give me this freedom that I was looking for. A year before my sentence was up, a little bit of a year, I walked out of there. And everybody's like, how did you do it? I didn't do nothing. I went internally, apply this process, realign my desire. That's this concept of self-love I developed. I'm like, again, I kind of borrowed from the scriptures, is you're demonstrating love to the thing you want. Not in a personal thing. We do self-love. People say, I love myself. I buy this. I do this. I work out. I eat right. Those are expressions of things. It's like, it's harder to change what you see on the mirror. The mirror is already reflecting. You have to change the person behind the mirror. And the person behind the mirror is this concept of yourself. You talk about it in a self-esteem. And so it's kind of, I gotta figure it out. Who do I want to be? And then embody that personality in order to become that. Because naturally, if I am already that person within me, I must exhibit the quality the characteristics, and the experience that reflect that person. So the world have no choice but to model that. And it becomes no, like for my case, I didn't have to work. For the case of Black, he didn't have to work out anything. People, circumstances will come and work in your favor. And so that by short, that's kind of where my whole journey began and how I end up having this understanding. It's just that when I came home, I said, okay, so because I was all over the place in terms of the concept. And I said, okay, now I have to create a framework that I can be able to, it's repeatable and it's result based. And again, I kind of use the same thing in the scriptures, because in the scriptures, Jesus said, you will know them by their results. So we are always known by these results that we portray into the world. You say, oh, that person, I mean, that person is nasty. That person is an amazing person. Johnny is awesome. You can be in his company, you can feel his energy. You're always expressing the inner person to the outer world.
Including yourself. I love that.
Mhm.
Yeah, Alpha. I wrote a lot down, a lot of notes there. Like there's certain things that kind of like click for me and it's like really hitting. One of the main things was like this develop. I love a process, by the way. I've got a very kind of. I like the psychology, but I'm also very sort of sales project manager kind of background, so I do love a good
Yeah. Okay,
process in
there you
terms
go.
of
You know
on my own psychology as well. So, yeah, what you talked about there in terms of the guy, what was his name? Do you say Black was his surname?
blacks, yeah.
Blacks, yeah.
Yeah.
He was focusing on like what he did want rather than what he didn't want, and one of my mentors always talks about that. And he focusing on what you want, and then you started applying the process and like what
Yeah.
you wanted. I just want to ask a little bit around, and I'm definitely for not just sitting in like self pity, sitting in anger, sitting in anxiety, sitting like in being down. But for you, what's the mix with actually allowing your negative or the less empowering emotions to be felt? Because is that not suppression? Just kind of just like a question, because I'm definitely all for
Yeah.
focusing where I want to go, but how do you deal with feeling the emotions that need to be felt as well?
Yeah. And I mean, I've heard this concept of can I just feel the emotion and let it be? And some of them I say that's how you express it out. But when you start thinking what science have come to discover, and when you based on what these scriptures or because when I study both the scriptures, the Gitters, and each and every ancient writings, they use different stories. They're amazing storytellers, but they are revealing a psychological world that we live. And we know we say that people will say that's heaven, whatever the case, but really Jesus made it very clear. Heaven is within you. The kingdom of heaven is within you. So it's referring back to this psychology of the mind that we're having. So it's not out there on the sky or anywhere else, but it's within each and every one of us. So those are the story of, I call them our story. So back to these questions you ask, if I allow certain emotions, actually in the scriptures it says, do not be foolish and play with these simple words, thinking it's just a play, because they create a memory. So if I take, even though something happened to me, and I just want to emotionalize it, I just want to feel it and let it go. What it does, it creates a memory. And memories, or whether you want to call them DNA and everything, because DNA, they're simply memories. They're just memories that need to be expressed under particular circumstances. They will trigger emotion, they will trigger whatever activities and in order to us to respond to life to consistent with the memory in question. So if I create a memory, emotionalize it, I create a memory, eventually that memory will fire back consistent with its characteristic when I face those circumstances. So it's like a seed. To me, I kind of actually find emotions are seed planted waiting for a moment. So if I don't want in the midst of I mean, here in US, there's a lot of summertime here in Minnesota. We like to pull up these weeds away from all the grasses because it kind of makes the grass look tacky. I I cannot allow, if I allow that seed, it's going to continue to sprout. But so is it suppression when I don't? Suppression is to say it's like I'm resisting it. I'm okay, but I'm not okay. I'm not feeling okay. I'm suppressing that emotion, and by suppressing it, actually, I enhance its quality. in science they tell us is a neurowave. So if I'm feeling something, by feeling it, if I keep feeling it, it's continue to be there. It strengthens the neurons that makes it easier for me to think about that particular pattern. And suppression now further enhances. It's the same concept where Jesus said, "Do not resist evil," because when you're suppressing, it becomes more attentive in your mind. It's apparent in your mind. So you strengthen the neurons of that idea. But what I do, and the scripture actually talks about it, it says renewal. It's not suppression. The scriptures calls it, Apostle Paul, he said, renewal of the mind. And to renewal in my process when I talk about idealize, I'm like, okay, what is the pain you are having? That's a process of idealization. Because idealizing is to take something that is broken and make it whole, but it's not something physical. We're talking about thoughts, emotions, images that we have in our mind. So I'm saying, okay, what am I feeling that is not consistent with my interest? I'm like, oh, you know what? In my relationship, things are not very good. So I'm not feeling recognized. I'm not feeling supported. So maybe that's the feeling a person is feeling. So I said, okay, we identify the feeling. Now we know who is the villain, because sometimes we have so many ghosts. Now we know who it is. And then the second step of that idealization is, what is the opposite feeling? I'm not asking how it came about, who did it, is what is the opposite of that feeling? So to an extent, I'm recognizing it, but I am now changing my focus. Psychology change is just a focus change, but here I said I'm idealizing it, and by doing so, that emotions becomes weaker. I'm weakening the strength of the emotion. I don't need to feel it. I don't need to continue to do anything. I'm just saying, okay, I got you. I know who you are. I'm walking away from you, and I'm paying attention to something else. So I'm replacing the you're not really replacing, but you are strengthening the opposite neurons, because there are these two conflicting neurons. One says this is the feeling or the emotion. The other one says I'm introducing equal and opposite emotion. So I'm no longer suppressing, I'm replacing it, if that makes sense, if that answered
Yeah.
that question.
Okay. So it's like you're acknowledging it's there, but you're not giving it power, and it's finding the opposite. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Like, yeah, I think you said like suppression is like when you're saying you're okay when you're not, and you're just like numbing it out
mhm,
basically
yeah.
that way.
Eh,
Okay. No, that makes sense. Yeah. And then with the visualization, like,
mhm.
and just like thinking, like doing it again and again and again. You said like during sleep, but then during awake as well.
Yeah.
Um, do you find with some people you work with that sometimes the old memory or the tough emotions does pop up a lot at first, but gradually the other memory will strengthen over time?
And that's very, very true. In fact, I have a book called The Exodus Within, and I borrow the story from the book of Exodus from the Bible. And
Mm,
this book, I took that story and lifted up. Most people read it as a history. I took it as actually a psychological journey that we take. And it defines, and if you're familiar, just a little bit of that Bible, that stories are about, there's this 10 plagues that happen in Egypt before the children of Israel were released. So I'm walking through that book and I explain each and every plague. It actually talks about that concept where you have this idea, these old ideas. And in the story, Pharaoh kept changing his mind. And in the book now, I explain who is Pharaoh. I'm assuming the writers what intended. And Pharaoh is this belief system. It will keep popping up and
mm,
tell you, you're not this, you're not that. But if you pay attention to Pharaoh, in the book I call it Pharaoh. So if you pay attention to Pharaoh or this villain that is keep telling you you are not this, or sometimes it's just your circumstances. You believe that you have financial freedom, and I've been in that places where I'm believing on a particular financial breakthrough. But every time we go, you get a bank account, you look at your bank account, it tells you don't have the money.
mm,
You look at everything else, like in the time when I was in prison. Every time I woke up, I opened my eyes, there was barbed wires, there were prisoners, they wear the same dress. They're telling me, in an essence, Pharaoh is refusing to let me go. I'm seeing the same villain. My circumstances reminding me I'm in prison, but I just closed my eyes a minute ago and imagined, visualizing, felt as if I was home. But I opened my eyes and everything else tells me otherwise. There will be God, there will be other inmates. So that's why the iterate part is critical. So you have that, it starts with idealize, you introduce, meaning you personalize the experience, and you iterate. You stay true to that core. And the scriptures use that and say, pray without ceasing, meaning that you got to keep praying. And Jesus said, those who stay through the end will be redeemed. It's not about going to heaven. Redeemed, whatever pain you are having, will be made clear. You will receive redemption from that pain, from that struggle, from the challenges. And I've applied that where I keep repeating. And I'm not forcing again that idea. I'm not suppressing, I'm not denying what I'm seeing. I'm just renewing it. I'm like, okay, I'm reminding myself this is who I am. It's like I use an analogy when somebody's calling, somebody comes and call you a different name, Pete. Hey, Pete, hey, Pete. They will come right in your face, hey, Pete. I'm like, my name is Johnny. And I know myself to be Johnny. I'm going to stand with Johnny. I don't care what you say. You've seen me and I told you I'm Pete, but I'm
Mm.
Johnny. So I keep reiterating by re-identifying myself with the ideal that I want to be.
So yeah, again, it's not denying what's
Mhm.
actually in your existence. It's not like it's about living in physical reality, but what's the word you use?
Like
Reinventing that.
reinvent, yeah. And it's acquiring that new identity. I mean,
Yeah.
being in prison, I've seen this playing a lot. People who, and I started learning this. I started asking people these questions because there are people who comes with charges like identity theft. I'm
Mm.
like, okay, tell me, how did you steal this identity? They said, oh, I took I took their name, and I went around pretending to be that person. I'm like, and then you were able to take the benefit that the person had. They were like, yeah. I'm like, okay, I got it. They went and steal physical identity. I'm gonna steal this spiritual identity of a person I want to be, and I adapt it so that I can get the benefit that identity offers. So kind of the same thing. And the scriptures have these stories they're telling. I mean, we don't have time, but like in the book, like I said, the Exodus within, break free from mental bondage from within out, from inside out. It's just I've taken that story, broke it down. A lot of these issues that we see or experience in this journey, they were told beautiful in the story, and I kind of revealed it, peeled the layers, and brought the psychological meaning, scientific that point that backs that up. But yeah, you're acquiring an identity that you want to be. Because the truth is, where we are in our life, we are because we have identified ourselves to be
Mm.
something. Mhm. And that identity we've taken up, we're benefiting, whether it's a negative benefit we're reaping from it, but we are. I mean, most of my clients, when I'm talking to them, I can quickly identify what identity they're in it
Mm.
because their words will say. I mean, I have one guy who always say, man, life is difficult, man, life is tough. I mean, there are people who are just blessed to have success. So I know what kind of identity is in right there. And I can right away, and when he's talking, and I'll finish up some of them their sentence. They're like, how did you know that? Because I know your identity, and your identity produces a particular character.
Mm.
Mhm.
So it's visualizing your identity as well, like that new
Yeah.
person. So it sounds like sometimes things will come back and say, "Oh no, you're not," and "Oh no,
Yeah.
that's not going to happen." But maybe you need to do it like 10, 20 times a day to begin with, and it's kind of
Yeah.
just building that faith that it's kind of
Yeah.
like doing that. Because I know a lot of people, and myself included in the past, are just be like, you do it a few times, like, "Oh, this ain't working."
Yeah.
That's not the case, you know. It's just like building it like a muscle, it sounds like, and having that
They,
faith that, yeah.
I think you kind of nailed it there. It's that muscle. Brain to me, I look, it's a muscle. You have to kind of keep building it. And one of the guests you had brought, and I usually use a lot of that example, and I forgot it's a lady, I forgot her name, but she talked about this concept of this phenomena that we all experience. You go to buy a cloth or buy a car, and then you might not even bought it, but you were shopping and you saw one and you like it and you touch it, felt it. By the time you walk away from the store or the car showroom, suddenly you see so many people with a similar thing.
Mm,
The reticular, the RCA, suddenly
yeah.
now it adjusts because you have given it a new identity. And it starts showing you everywhere you go. I'm like, okay, I mean, there's many of these cars. I never saw them before. They were always there. But
Mm,
your brain could not process that because it was not part of your identity. So you've added that. So because identity is just simply how do we identify with things?
mm. But the
And sounds,
visualization, yeah, the
yeah.
visualization and identity sounds like you've got to really feel it as well, not just see it. So,
Oh yeah, yeah. And actually that's the key. Feeling is the key because if when you look at the science behind feeling, feeling gives this concept that it is true.
mm,
I've had people do a test. They say, I tell them, just go in the morning, wake up and just say, I have a headache. I have a headache. Repeat it just in the morning hours. Before the end of the day, they have a headache. So repeat it and feel it, just because you know how the headache feels and how you feel, and they'll be like that. And we have this. I said, you have hypnotized yourself. And I have a lady who have an allergic. Actually, I forgot what she used to live in England. I mean, in London. I forgot the side of the London. I went to school with her back in. I grew up in East Africa, but she came and she lived in London. She have this allergy with grass. I mean, it will get bad on summertime. But she kept saying all these years, I mean, when summer comes, oh, my legs, I just got to deal with this over and over. And I kind of told her, let's change this language, reprogram the language, and then let's kind of layer a feeling how it feels on wintertime when you're in London and experience your legs without these wounds. I mean, things that are happening, the allergy, because eventually she itches. And so she have so many scars in her legs because of that. And the first time she says to me, man, it feels like a lie. I said, don't worry. Don't focus so much about it feels like a lie. Just focus. Let it be just a play. And she did it. The following summer, actually, she had an opportunity to, I can remember she went to Australia or something for job purpose. So she couldn't really experience that feeling when she was in London. The next year, she was in London and suddenly nothing showed up. I mean, her legs did not itch. She will go to the park, sit on the grass, and nothing. To this day, she doesn't have that problem.
wow. Yeah.
Mhm.
Sounds like sometimes multiple times you need to sort of do that programming of the
Yeah,
brain, even if it's like 30-second sort of bouts, but keep doing it again and again and again
yeah.
through the day.
And
Powerful on
there's a formula.
repetition.
Yep. There's a formula I kind of use. I tell people it's just our brain kind of works in a structure. So the formula usually I said you do use the 369 formula. So in the morning, you make an intention to actually do this exercise three times. And then in the afternoon, find a room somewhere and do it 6 times. But in an event, if you are reminded, if somebody said something that reminds you of your pain, repeat it again 6 times.
Hmm.
If nothing happened, but do it 6 times. And then at night before going to sleep, do it 9 times. It creates these structures and you keep repeating it, eventually become a pattern you find in yourself. I used to, I mean, I used to kind of like every other 2 words, I'll use a curse word. It was just natural. It was kind of one of those filler words. And I read this concept about you have limited vocabulary, so you're using curse words. And I tried every trick and it couldn't work. But knowing what I knew this, I started applying it. So every time I wanted to use a curse word, I would actually pause myself. Eventually, it becomes natural. If that word want to come out, and my wife started laughing at me because she's like, when you pronounce a curse word, it looks so fake. I've rid myself of those words completely. And I didn't go to learn trick or anything else because I tried so many tricks I couldn't. And now it's if I use a curse word with you, you can tell that I'm faking it
I love
because that
that example.
identity, so that identity has gone.
Oh wow. No, it sounds like from what you've been sharing, reminds me of a quote one of the guys I learned from, a guy called Peter Sage, who's been on the podcast, talks about. He says the phrase "reality is subject to influence," and it sounds that's what we've been talking about, kind of from the mind and seeing things in a certain way. Like Blacks was able to, get out, and then you were able to get out a little bit before as well, by thinking and then retraining your brain in that way. And I
Yeah.
like the 369 method as well. You said we could use like day to day application for things. Sounds really, really powerful. So yeah, thank you for that, Alpha. I
No,
know
no,
there's a lot,
no.
there's so much more you offer and guidance you give, and loving this conversation. But just before we wrap up,
Mhm.
is there maybe a final point or an emphasis on the point we've talked about today that you'd like to share? And where can the listener find you to get all your great resources, your services, reach out? Yeah, that'd be great to know.
Yes. Yeah, I would start by saying, often because this is about transformation, and transformation begins at the place of our weakest point. So I tell people, do not be terrified with your pain. They're actually just signals. If you're driving, let's say you're driving somewhere in London or you're here in US and you're planning to go south, and suddenly you see a sign says you are north. North is just signal telling you that you're on the wrong direction. The obvious thing we do always is just to look for an exit. And so is in our lives. We cannot fix problem by keep pressing forward. We have to change the direction. So I tell people, my clients all the time, because they will come, they're overwhelmed by their problem. I said, no, no, no. You have overwhelmed yourself by keep thinking about this problem. Let's just think it from a different point of view. It's a signal. So what is this signal telling us? So I ask the audience today, if you listen to this podcast, whatever you are, whatever pain you're going through, that's your companion. Don't look at it as a villain. Don't, especially in this Christian world, people, and a lot of people come from that in some level or the other, where you're told it's a punishment. It's not a punishment. It's an information. Take it as an information. And so the question is, what is this information telling me? And that's what I encourage you to. When you listen today, just ask yourself, what is your pain telling you? Don't ignore it. Don't suppress it. Ask yourself what is telling you. Once you identify what is telling you, not who did it, but the information itself. And then you can start the healing journey, because that's where it starts. And to learn about my 3I framework, Johnny is an amazing person. So for the audience who are listening to this podcast, I am going to actually give you a free gift. If you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and my handle is Alpha Mshihiri, ALPHA, MSHIHI. And if you DM me, because I have that book called Exodus, if you DM me Exodus, I'm going to give you a free presentation walking you through step by step on how you can actually exercise a 3A framework to be able to start transforming yourself. Like I said, I focus on self-love, which is kind of had to do with the self-esteem and confidence. And then the second is the relationship with your spouse, with your wife, or something to that effect. And then finances. So those areas, if you're having some level of pain, I'm your guy. Just DM me there, Exodus, and I will send you a free gift just to kind of help you with that. And once you do that, you get that information. If you still need some more, I'll give you a link where you can you can book a 45 minutes free clarity call with me. I'll have a conversation. I'll kind of give you some guidance. And from there, if you like some of my resources, you can be able to take on it. But for great guy Johnny here, you got that free that workbook. I'll give it to you. So just DM me, and that's how you can reach me.
Oh, amazing, Alpha. Super appreciate your generosity and also everything you shared today. So once again, we'll be sure to link all that up as well. So a massive thank you for being here today.
Nope. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be here.
Amazing. So that concludes today's episode. And remember to lead with your heart and not with fear.